The Attorney General's office has launched a criminal investigation into the Oklahoma Department of Veterans Affairs and its 7 veteran centers. 5 new bills have been filed that would make major changes to how the troubled state agency operates, add a new layer of oversight, and give the governor more authority over management of the ODVA. The investigation and proposed changes are the result of reports by O&R and the Journal-Record newspaper that documented years of abuse and neglect at the long-term care facilities for veterans.
State Senator Frank Simpson and State Representative Richard Morissette both got an earful of the problems at the Department of Veterans Affairs' 7 long-term care facilities during hearings they held last summer. Simpson and Morissette are passionate when they talk about the change needed at the agency where abuse, neglect, even deaths had become almost commonplace.
When we look back at the interim study, the information that's been shared with me by families, by residents there, by employees that work there, many of the problems we see in the system right now are a direct result of lack of oversight by an outside agency.
I believe there's been some criminal activity involved. I don't need to get into all that. He'll be presenting it to the multi-county grand jury. But I do think, and by doing this type of investigation, it will prevent future harm, hopefully, from ever happening again in these homes.
The new laws proposed by Simpson and Morissette would put the agency back under the inspection regimen of the state health department. Senator Simpson says in 2003, when the health department inspection stopped, conditions at the centers deteriorated.
It's been an incestuous relationship over there since 2003, where they received the reports of possible abuse and neglect. They determine if they're going to be investigated. They investigate them themselves, and they themselves determine the outcome of the investigation. That's not what we need.
Richard Putnam, chairman of the War Veterans Commission, does not endorse the idea of returning to state oversight, and the new executive director of the agency, John McReynolds, gives less than a ringing endorsement.
I don't care who they send to evaluate this agency and its 7 veteran centers. We will have a copy of the checklist, and we will use that checklist to prepare for whoever comes in.
Senator Simpson and Representative Morissette see state oversight as critical to ending what has become a growing list of tort claims and lawsuits against the agency because of the abuse some veterans have suffered.
I could care less if the director doesn't want the health department in. I could care less if Chairman Putnam doesn't want the health department in. I don't care about them. My concern is about the veterans. And we've got to do everything we possibly can to make sure those veterans are getting the best care they can possibly get.
Well, my God, what is it the first thing we should be doing is protecting those men and women that served our country that are elderly, like my father, by the way, who doesn't need care. I'm fortunate he's 90 years old, served in World War II. But I've met these gentlemen and these women, and we have every duty in our legislature to make sure they're protected, and this bill will do that.
Anita Plummer's 91-year-old father is a resident of the Norman Veterans Center. She visits him regularly, and while she says there are lots of new employees at the facility, if she wasn't vigilant about her dad's care, his quality of life would suffer.
I keep close watch. So if I weren't showing up, I'm not sure.
And that uncertainty is based on the level of basic care her father receives.
We'd go back and forth about whose job is it to clean his mouth. You know, someone would say, well, that's a courtesy aide's job. And they would say, no, that's the aide's job. It was confused about who was supposed to do that.
John McReynolds has overseen the hiring of many new nursing assistants. Several administrators have been replaced, along with medical staff. And he knows that's not enough.
We're making a strong effort in the area of recruiting, but not far behind that is also retention. We can get them in the building, but we need to get them there and create an environment where it's a place that they want to be a part of and they stay around.
That is the focus of another of Senator Simpson's bills. It would create a career ladder for new employees to encourage them to stay on the job. Meanwhile, serious staffing shortages continue at the centers. Anita Plummer thinks if they could hire more qualified people, the problems at the veteran centers would begin to go away.
They can do it if they have enough help and if they have good leadership.
John McReynolds agrees that leadership is the key to turning ODVA around, but recent proposals for big pay raises for himself and center administrators, hiring 7 new people, did not sit well with Morissette and Simpson.
We've got the same people from that same system that are being moved into positions of responsibility. That's not a culture change. These are individuals that are not going to be flexible to looking at new ways of doing things. And I'm adamantly opposed to many of the things that I see taking place over there in the last week.
Pay raises for CNAs and downline, frontline folks that work in the homes is absolutely necessary. But asking for raises for administrators after this debacle is absurd. And as long as I'm on that committee, I can assure you that they are going to go through great scrutiny trying to get that kind of money for administrators.
McReynolds says a pay raise for the agency's director has been on the table for some time in order to match that of other state agency heads. On other pay hikes within his agency, he says they are necessary and deserved.
I want to compensate the deputy director. I want to compensate anybody at this central office who I believe has the ability to provide the oversight over this agency in the corners of this state. I want to attract good quality leaders, and we've got good administrators in all of the centers. I'm proud of them. They are personable leaders, and they're committed to what they're doing.
And McReynolds wants to hire more staff to help veterans get all the benefits they are entitled to, and in turn produce substantially more income for the agency. ODVA has begun audits to make that happen.
We've completed an audit of the files at Claremore out of a 300-bed facility and found 117 files that needed action. And some of these are Vietnam veterans who have Agent Orange exposure and have conditions that result from that exposure that have never been dealt with.
In a matter of weeks, the money the ODVA receives from the federal government for veterans who are 70 to 100% disabled due to their military service will increase to more than $300 a day. 22% of the center's clients currently have that rating.
And I'm convinced that if we do our jobs, we can get that up to 40%. We can elevate that 22% up to 40% fairly quickly. So therein comes more revenue from the federal government that we can use to pay doctors and nurses and staff.
As far as the investigations of his agency that are now underway, John McReynolds is not thinking about that very much.
That stuff will take care of itself, and it'll be resolved one way or another, and whatever action needs to occur, if any, will happen, and none of it will be because of any action I take.
But there is one investigation that may heavily impact operations of the ODVA. The agency's finances include millions of dollars from state and federal government, along with thousands held in trust for center residents. The State Auditor and Inspector's Office is conducting an audit of the agency to see where that money has been going.
They're still in the process of doing their audit on ODVA, and I'm very, very interested to see what they find. I think it may be taking a little bit longer than they thought, which is a good thing, because I think they're finding rocks they need to turn over there.
The finances of the Oklahoma Department of Veterans Affairs have been the source of several allegations of mismanagement. Senator Simpson and others expect the audit by State Auditor Gary Jones' staff to determine whether any of those allegations have merit. If federal funds have been mishandled, it could affect what the agency gets in the future and how much they could be required to pay back to the federal government.